Winter Roses, Summer by fairytalelovr. Chapter 25. Plotting and Plotting. Ned smiled at the child sleeping in his arms. With her eyes closed, Lyanna looked just like her grandmother and namesake, like Arya when she was this young. Though the inhuman beauty of the Targaryen features was also very pronounced, more so than in Jon, given the addition of Daenerys's blood. When her eyes opened, however, the girl was undeniably the blood of the dragon, and she was more dragon than wolf, which had only given her the curly dark brown hair. Though the stony Dornish also shared purple eyes, Ella's was proof of that, lilac eyes were exclusively a Valyrian trait. "Father, are you crying?" Jon asked softly. Ned, Ella, Sansa and Arya had arrived on the Midnight Fortress only a couple of hours ago on the Lady Daenerys, which Jon had sent to pick them up. Lady Olenna had graciously accepted the invitation to go along with her granddaughter, so her son wouldn't need to stop his ship to the capital to pick them up. Robert had decided to send one Kingsguard to accompany the Hand of the King and represent the absent king, and Sir Barristan had been the one chosen. By Cersei's manipulation, Jaime Lannister had joined the group travelling north to represent House Lannister. After quickly cleaning up, Ned demanded to be introduced to his granddaughter, so Jon led him to the nursery. The maids had quickly left, so they were left alone for now.
"I am holding my first grandchild for the very first time," he said happily. "Of course I'm crying. She looks like you, son."
"I think that aside from the hair, she looks just like Dany. According to Wyler, those cheekbones are very Targaryen."
"Well, yours look a bit like this too,"
Ned thought, but didn't dare voice.
"Was the birth difficult?" "Terrifying. I was scared. I shouldn't have told you. Not then. Births are earth-wracking enough without that hanging over your head. I'm glad I know, Father. Truly." Ned nodded and turned his attention back to the gurgling baby. How did the king receive the news?" "Better than I expected, actually."
They were quiet for a few minutes.
"Robb told me about Lady Catelyn." Ned sighed. "That is actually something I want to talk more about with you and Robb. You are older. I can tell you more."
"Is this about the cold shoulder Sansa seems to be giving Ella?"
"Yes." Ned sighed. "Sansa has been difficult. Arya seems to approve. I do too, for that matter. She seems lovely, and I know you wouldn't marry her to simply have a wife. It's one of the things I need to talk to you and your brother about. The others are too young, though Arya's already eavesdropped on it a bit. Come on. I think this little one is hungry anyway," Ned said, holding Leah's hands that were trying to grab his chest. Ned called the maids back in, and one went immediately to get Daenerys. Then he led the way to his solar and sent a guard to get Robb and Benjen. They discussed the mining business as they waited. "There is something I never told you, because there has never been any need to tell you," Ned said, "but things have changed. Robb, you know I have..." He cleared his throat. "After the rebellion, I have always been faithful and honourable to your mother. I know of mother's doings and her choice, Father. I married Catelyn for duty, and though I grew to love her, when we met, my heart already belonged to another." "Is this your way of saying you intend to marry again, Father?" Robb asked. "It is. I mean no disrespect to your mother, but I would like your blessing. She would never take Catelyn's place in you or your siblings' lives, but I do hope you'll come to see her as a stepmother who loves you and cares for you." "You said your heart already belonged to her when you married Mother." Robb looked at Jon. "Do you mean..." "You told me my mother is dead," Jon cut in. "She is," Benjen stated. Then his face went slack with shock. "You can't mean whom I think you mean." Ned blushed. "She is supposed to be dead, Ned. How did... Seven hells, are they both alive?" Ned was red as a tomato now, but he nodded. "It was too dangerous. We had to do it. We had to fake it.
And he let you pretend you bested him? Benjen asked incredulously.
It was his idea. I'm sorry to interrupt, but John and I have no idea who you're talking about.
Rob interrupted, annoyed.
I thought this was about Ella.
John said,
Ella? Isn't that the governess? Father, I don't blame you for wanting to marry again, but do you really think it's sensible that the Lady of Winterfell should be a commoner? I married into a great house once for a fancy alliance, Rob. I've done my duty to House Stark and to Winterfell. I am marrying for love now. Father, I know you said the dissolution of the marriage doesn't affect me or my siblings in any way, but I must ask, if you have another son, you are my heir, Rob. Nothing can take her from you, nor would I allow for it.
Rob nodded.
Well, John said she is good to the girls, and Arya has nothing but praises. If this is your decision. But why does everyone think she's dead?
John asked.
Why did you have to fake her death?
Ned took a deep breath.
We met in Harrenhal, in that ill-fated tourney. I fell in love with her then, and she with me. My father said he would think about my marriage after Brandon married Catelyn, but then the rebellion happened and I had to follow through with the alliance. But she knew where Lyanna was during the rebellion. Robert wouldn't have forgiven it. He would have called for her head, and her brother would never bend the knee to Robert. We managed to convince them that wasting his life was senseless, that he could still live honourably.
Who is she?
Rob asked. Ashara Dane.
Isla had noticed Sansa's mood as soon as they had docked, so after cleaning up she had invited the girl to come and see her wedding dress, and see if she could improve anything. Sansa had immediately perked up, so they went to the extravagant and unnecessary, in Isla's opinion, room that Daenerys had given her future aunt. The dress was standing in a mannequin in the corner, and Sansa gasped in awe as soon as she saw it. "Oh, gods, Isla! It's amazing! Ladies, darling." She rolled her eyes at Sansa's glare. "Fine. Daenerys convinced me to accept help from the castle seamstress, and she had all these fabrics and ideas. So I'm glad I did." She let the girl marvel for a bit longer. "Now, do you want to talk?" Sansa looked down, fingering inexistent lint on her dress. "Is it that obvious?" "Not very, but I've got a keen eye." "Do you know what happened to my mother?" Isla nodded. "Why did father let it happen?" "My dear, I doubt your father would be so unkind as to force it on her." "She said it was her choice, but father just decided to remarry." "Oh, so he should stay alone because your mother decided to become a scepter?" Isla asked, and Sansa blushed. "Sansa, nothing and no one would ever replace you in your father's heart. You know that, don't you?" "But if he has more children—" "Let me tell you a little something about hearts. They grow. So when a parent has a new child, their heart expands to fit that love. Love is not shared, it's multiplied, always. If Lord Stark has more children, his heart will grow to fit all of you. Or do you think he loved you any less just because Arya or Bran or Rickon were born?" "What about my mother?" "The new Lady Stark will be your stepmother. She can help and guide you. But no one will ever be your mother except for Catelyn Tully. All right? I think I'll ask her intentions then." Isla chuckled. "You do that, dear. You do that." In Jon's Solar, the conversation had now turned to other ventures. After Jon and Robb overcame the shock of their father loving another woman, and participating in a deception as big as Arthur and Ashara Dane's supposed deaths.
"A marriage alliance?" Robb asked. "Between who?"
Jon snickered. "Well, all the men in this room are happily paired, brother. Except one." He paled.
"You can't. But I—" "Lady Olenna only had the initial proposal, son," Ned said. "I won't force you. I know what a forced marriage is like. But I do hope we can talk about it like adults. You're 16 years old. It's past time to have this settled." But what would we gain with that? Robb asked with this desperation that made it seem like a marriage would be the utmost punishment. An alliance with the Reach would be beyond beneficial to the North when winter comes, Robb. And it will come eventually. Even if we are in the midst of the longest summer in recorded history. Plus, my father was right that the North was closed in on itself. We need to make southern alliances. Is she even pretty? Robb asked, and Jon exploded with laughter. I think you're missing the point of an arranged marriage, brother. Robb threw a pillow at him. Says the man married to a bloody gorgeous woman. Jon caught it, still laughing. What can I do, brother? I'm lucky. He threw the pillow back. Enough, boys. Ned called, amused. Robb, Lady Marjorie came with us on the Lady Daenerys. You should invite her to a walk through the gardens. Get to know her. Robb grumbled, but nodded. And now there is an unpleasant subject I must talk with you about. Robb, as my heir and acting Lord of Winterfell, and Jon as one of the most important bannermen. Lady Elena brought me a gift of goodwill, if you could call it that. That sounds like a bad omen, Benjen said. She has heard that Tywin Lannister is plotting something to do with trade. Jon scoffed. Not surprising. My mind's bound to have made him nervous. And only about to get worse once the tourney is done. Ned agreed. I'll keep an eye out for anything to do with that. And I do know something is coming. Luckily, it needs to go through me to be approved. Or even if it goes straight to Robert, I can try and reason with him before it's settled. And I also know the king is unhappy with his wife and heir. That's even less surprising. Jon grumbled. This realm hasn't seen a fight since the Greyjoy Rebellion 9 years ago. Ned said, unrest is taking hold, and I would rather be prepared when it comes. You speak as if you know a war is coming, father. Robb said, I fear it, rather. There are a few precautions we can take that will ensure the North is secure. Precautions that will take more than a fortnight to be done properly. Moat Cailin? Benjen suggested, and Ned nodded. What about a fleet? Jon, you mentioned you intended to grow your navy. Robb said, that will take a while yet, but Stannis Baratheon said he'd come for the wedding, and bring Sir Davos Seaworth to fulfill his end of the bargain. He'll supervise the beginning of the fleet's construction and training of the sailors. Good, Ned agreed. I thought to have you Lord Admiral of the Northern Fleet, Jon. Do you accept it? Father, you honour me. Ned smiled. I'll make Lord Manderley the Lord Vice Admiral. He'd still be beneath you, son, but that should appease him. He was unhappy about House Starling's elevation to a major house, and he was, I'm certain, hoping to marry Robb to his own granddaughter, when he was bypassed by the Reach, no less. What about the western coast? Benjen asked. Ned sighed. That will require more thinking. Perhaps we could have a collaboration, Benjen suggested. Deepwood Moor is at the edge of the Wolfswood. The Glovers can provide the wood, and Bear Island can provide the men to build and captain the ships. It could work, Benjen agreed. I can have Manderley in the east and Mormont in the west. I can ask Lord Glover to send his brother to command a party of archers in Moat Cailin during the rebuilding. How will you justify it to the king? It's bound to make people in the south nervous, Robb said. Jon is expanding his navy because he found money, Ned answered, and I've decided to do the same in the western coast to deal with ironborn pirates. No one will question that. And Moat Cailin? Jon pointed out. I already have 4 sons, and a second marriage will probably give me more. I'm re-renovating it for one of them. Why not re-renovate some of the castles in the western coast? Robb suggested. Leah is the heiress to the Midnight Fortress, but if we renovate Sea Dragon Point, it could go to a future son. Bad jokes apart, Jon rolled his eyes. I'm sure Daenerys would be thrilled. Jon looked at a map he had of the north, and they descended into plans. I still get the impression that he's hiding something from us, Robb said later that evening. He and Jon were in the latter's sitting room, enjoying some ale after dinner. I don't know about hiding, but I did get the impression there's more he isn't saying. We're his 2 eldest sons, and he just told us a secret that would make the king furious. What else could there be? I think things at King's Landing are worse than he made it sound, Jon suggested. The king can't stand the queen. He yelled at her in the middle of a feast, Robb. And you saw him here and in Winterfell. He makes no effort to hide his dalliances. So what? What if Robert gave an indication that he wants to set Cersei aside? That would undoubtedly make the Lannisters declare war. I understand Father standing with the king. But why close the north up like this? We've never had a fleet. And now we've got an admiral and a vice-admiral. We went through a rebellion much worse than this, and he didn't man-moat Caitlyn like he said he would. Let alone born at the cost of the renovations. Bran, like he is, he won't marry. But Rickon will be an old man with grandchildren by the time it's done. Now you're reaching, Rob. It didn't take half as many years to get the Midnight Fortress inhabitable, and it had been empty, abandoned for much longer. But about Bran, there's something I haven't told Father yet. I need your opinion. Rob frowned as Jon sat up straighter. Later on, it was well into the night when Jon walked into his bedchamber to find Daenerys already dozing on the bed. Ghost immediately went to his large bed by the fire, and Jon got changed into his nightclothes. Then, as delicately as he could, he unlaced the ties of Dany's dress and tried to pull away the heavier layers. She stirred and mumbled incoherent things in what Jon supposed was Valyrian, while he managed to strip her down to her shift and pull the covers away from beneath her to cover them both. He chuckled, settled on his side on the bed, drew her into his arms, kissed her forehead softly, and let sleep overtake him. On the next morning, Daenerys found Jon by the lake of the Godswood. He was twirling a winter rose between his fingers and staring unseen into the flower. "I thought you had overcome your brooding phase," she said softly, sitting next to him. He chuckled and turned to place the flower behind her ear. "My soon-to-be aunt says I'm incurable."
Dany smiled, rolling her eyes. "What is it? You were in your solar with your father, Uncle Benjen, and Rob all day. Then you and Rob talked well into the night. Has something happened?"
Father is wary of what he is seeing in King's Landing. I said I wanted to grow my navy, so he named me Admiral of the Northern Fleet.
"Can he do that?"
"He's the Warden of the North. Of course he can. He named Lord Manderley the Vice Admiral, and he'll have Mormonts and Glovers working on building the Western Fleet. And he's rebuilding Moat Caitlin."
"Who for?"
"One of his sons."
"You mean Bran or Rickon? I thought Catelyn had joined the Sept. Their marriage is over. She won't be giving him any more sons."
Jon sighed, looking across the lake. "Is it wrong for me to be happy she's gone?"
Daenerys' face closed. "After she prayed for your death and our daughters? Most certainly not."
"She lost everything, though. And she's their mother."
"Jon, can you imagine what would have happened if we hadn't gotten married? If she hadn't managed to send you away before? She would never accept you in Winterfell when your father left for the capital. She would most likely have exiled you to the wall, and think it was well deserved because a bastard had more worth than freezing and fighting wildlings."
"Sometimes I wonder that she was so cruel because we were betrothed. Because she wanted a princess betrothed to her son, not me."
"Does it justify her actions, though? She prayed for the death of an innocent child, Jon. She prayed against our marriage. She prayed for my barrenness. And when I discovered that I was with child, she prayed Lyanna wouldn't be born. Whatever her reasons, I don't grant her forgiveness. Let her cleanse her soul with her gods."
"You're right."
"Of course I am."
Jon chuckled. "Father is getting married again."
"Oh, how marvellous! I hope he finally gets a wife who's worthy of him."
"Daddy,"
he whined. "Who is the lucky woman?"
"About that, you won't believe the story. I never thought my father would be capable of such a political manoeuvre."
Daenerys felt her chin fall in shock after Jon told her. Ashara Dane? Sir Arthur Dane? Suddenly the dream she'd had the week before made sense. A falling star landing in the harbour of Sunset Town. The Midnight Fortress was filled to the brim with visiting nobles and their parties, and no amount of preparation could fully prepare them for the madness that it incited. Jon and Daenerys were very gracious hosts. Though the lords present at the tourney in King's Landing had already been impressed with Jon, Daenerys managed to charm them, even from behind the hurdle of being called the Mad King's daughter. Sir Barristan in particular had been very moved when they met. "I'm sorry for my blubbering, my lady.
But you remind me so much of your mother, I couldn't help it.
Daenerys bit her lip. There were too many ears about for her to ask any interesting questions. There's nothing to forgive, sir. But I am afraid I must see to my daughter. I wonder, would you escort me to the nursery?
It would be an honour, Lady Starling.
The knight offered his arm, and Daenerys took it, leading the way out of the hall. Iris inconspicuously made sure no ears followed them. What was she like? Daenerys asked once they were out of earshot.
She was beautiful, my lady. The most beautiful woman in any room. And you are her spitting image. But more than that, she was kind and fierce. Oh, was she fierce. She would give away gold and food to an orphanage in Fleabottom, and when the king complained, she faced him head on. She kept your brothers safe and blissfully happy.
I suppose you mean safe and blissfully ignorant about my father? Sir Barristan sighed.
Your father was... He was a good king in the beginning. He always had the madness in him, though. But that didn't affect the realm too much. But then Duskendale happened. After what he went through, he wasn't the same anymore. And he was convinced Rhaegar and Tywin Lannister had conspired together to let him die in those dungeons, so Rhaegar could ascend to the throne. He became paranoid and erratic. Everyone was his enemy. Rhaegar, Tywin, his court, the small folk, even your mother. Sometimes I wonder if I didn't keep to my vows and did my job too well. If Rhaegar had arisen to the throne then, it would have been for the best.
I always blamed Rhaegar for the rebellion, Daenerys said after a moment. And how could I not? Growing up in Winterfell, having the lords and ladies calling me Dragonspawn and blaming me for the death of their former liege, his heir and daughter. Until Lord Stark called me to his solar and told me what caused the rebellion. That my father had murdered Lord Rickard and Lord Brandon.
Did he tell you?
He told me his sister hadn't been raped, but refused to speak any more on the subject.
What is done, my lady.
The King's Guard said, and Daenerys nodded. They had arrived at the nursery.
I wonder if an old man might be nosy and request to...
Of course, Dany said with a smile. They went in, and she took Lyanna from the maid. Sir Barristan cried when he took her with trembling hands.
Oh, she's a wonder,
he said once the maid had taken the baby back.
May the gods bless her, my princess,
he said quietly, though fervently, with a small bow of his head. Daenerys looked up at him, and they locked eyes for one long moment. On the day of the wedding, the Southerners were shocked to find out the ceremony was to take place at night, but none of the Northerners paid them any mind. Jon walked nervously down the corridor, his anxiety making the package in his hands feel like it weighed a ton. He knocked, and Araya quickly let him in.
You look beautiful,
he said. Isla chuckled. Thank you, but you can thank your wife for the dress and the handmaidens.
I'll be sure to tell her. She's with Lyanna, or should be here. Are you ready?
Yes, the girls are just keeping me company.
So, Eerie, Jerea, would you excuse us?
Jon asked, and the girls curtsied and left. He played with the string of the package, unsure of how to start. Oh, please, the suspense is killing me, Isla jested. He chuckled.
Dany mentioned you weren't going to wear a maiden cloak.
Well, I'm a widow, not a maiden.
I know, but it's tradition.
I don't have a house, Jon, and I don't mind.
But I do. I asked Kira to help me with it, and Sansa took over once she got here. You don't have to wear it if you don't want to, but...
He passed her the package, and Isla opened it with shaking hands. She gasped as she unfolded the cloak. It was soft light grey with winter roses embroidered neatly with blue thread. I
never met my mother,
Jon said softly.
but she trusted you to protect and raise me. And for me, there is no higher recommendation. You are the only mother figure I know, Isla. So it would honour me and my house if you would wear our colours and allow me to give you away to your betrothed.
Tears were silently running down her face as she forgot all propriety and pulled John into a tight hug. I know I'm not, nor will I ever presume or even want to be your mother. That privilege belongs to her alone. But you are like a son to me, so I can see no greater honour than to accept. After she had donned the cloak, John led her through the castle down to the Godswood, which was already filled with guests. There were several whispers when they saw the maiden cloak, some nasty, but some commented on how it was a sign that House Starling fully supported the match.
Who comes before the old gods this night?
Ned started the ceremony after John delivered Isla to our dumbstruck Uncle Benjen. The feast was winding down as Isla and Benjen opened their gifts. She gave a very suspicious look when she saw John and Daenerys approaching, mischief clear in their eyes. What are you two up to? Benjen asked. I'm already wearing my gifts, Isla said, pointing to the necklace, earrings and comb made of winter diamonds.
No, those were my gifts to you, John explained. Now this is our gift, from House Starling to the bride and groom.
He passed them a scroll. Being more experienced with reading, Benjen took it and unrolled it, quickly passing his eyes through the words. Then his eyes bulged and his chin fell open. John took goblets for him and Daenerys from a passing waiter and called for silence.
If I may, I ask all present to raise their glass in a toast for the bride and groom, Benjen and Isla, Lord and Lady of Crystalia.
Around the room, lords and ladies echoed the toast. Isla took the scroll from her new husband, reading it with trembling hands. Benjen was shocked.
You're giving me a lordship? With lands and a castle, uncle,
John said with a smile.
Though the castle, much like this one, has been empty since the doom. I'm afraid there'll be enough years between now and the completion of the renovation for you to impose your presence.
Laughing and crying, Benjen pulled his nephew into a tight hug.
Ned did a good job with you, John. It is truly undeniable whose blood you share.
Isla pulled him into a hug too.
She'd be proud of you, she whispered. You are just like her.
And for me, there is no higher recommendation. John smiled, squeezing her hand. Isla was, right now, his only bridge to the elusive, faceless woman who invaded his dreams every night, but whose name he still didn't know. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that. Oh my god, I love it. Love it, love it, love it. That was such a lovely chapter. The wedding, her talking to them, John and Rob know about Ashara. Oh, the bit with Barristan holding baby Lyanna was gorgeous, and him calling Dany his princess, not his lady, when they're in private. Oh, jeez, I love it. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe, and hit that bell to get notified for when I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye, my guys, gals, and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video.